don't watch much television. Basically, since working here, I just don't have time. But when I do, I think that the ads are sometimes more intriguing than the actual programs. And one such ad campaign that really catches my eye is Disney's Making Memories. It appears to me that they're inviting us to make memories with our families and our friends more than they are selling trips to their theme parks. Tonight's speaker, Katy Moss-Warner, is responsible for making some of the most beautiful memories at Walt Disney World Resort in Orlando. Katy was director of Disney's Horticulture and Environmental Initiatives at the Walt Disney World Resort in Florida. With a team of nearly 700, she was responsible for the landscapes of 4 theme parks, 15 resort properties, and over 70 miles of roads on the 30,000-acre property. For 25 years, from 1976 to the year 2000, she provided the leadership necessary to ensure that Disney's horticultural traditions of beautiful gardens and environmental responsibility were sustained. Katy is currently President Emeritus of the American Horticultural Society, a national, nonprofit, member-based organization with a really bold vision of making America a nation of gardeners and this land a land of gardens. Katy served on the American Horticultural Society Board of Directors from 1992 to 1998. She served as chairperson of the board from 1998 to 2000, and then provided day-to-day leadership as president and CEO from 2002 to 2006. Katy has been featured in numerous books and magazine articles, newspapers, and she's also co-authored just a beautiful book called The Gardens of Walt Disney World Resort. That was one of the memories that I brought back from Orlando when I went when my children were very little. Katy has been actively involved with a number of professional and not-for-profit organizations. Currently, she serves on the board of America in Bloom and has been an America in Bloom city judge since the year 2007. She's judged international cities for Communities in Bloom since 2010. It is my great pleasure to welcome Katy Moss-Warner.
Okay, now that you've all been really nice to me, and I really appreciate it, now I have to get to work. I am very, very honored to be here for your spring forum. I don't know Sullivan County well, but and having met some of you tonight, I would really like to know it a lot better. I have to admit, I'm a New Yorker. I grew up in Garrison, across the river, and of course, as you know, you never cross to the other side of the river, right? You never go east, and we never go west. But I did grow up there, and I do feel myself very much a part of the Hudson Valley. I was very fortunate in that I grew up in what I thought as a kid was kind of a old, rundown house. But I found out a little bit later, after I had studied landscape architecture and horticulture and all those good things, that in fact I had grown up in a garden that was designed by one of our great American landscape architects, Fletcher Steele. It was just one of the many treasures that we have along the Hudson Valley. For me and my 9 brothers and sisters, we saw the garden as a lot of weed pulling, hedge trimming, lawn mowing, leaf raking, and log hauling. That's what it was for us. But today, it is featured in a new book called Gardens of the Hudson Valley, and we couldn't be prouder. It was an important inspiration for me, and I am sure many of you have similar stories of being inspired at a young age to appreciate the beauty of nature and the importance of plants in our lives. I am certainly proud to be here with you this evening and applaud each of you as you ready yourselves to launch important community projects. And, of course, I am very happy to reconnect with my friends in Warwick. Remember now, these are important folks. They were the winners of the 2010 International Communities in Bloom competition. Unbelievable. So thanks for coming, Mayor Michael and amazing Deb Sweeten. This evening I want to share with you a little bit about the business side of beautification. I was challenged to make great horticulture happen in a profit company. You can say there was a lot of money, but there was a lot of money for a lot of things, but it wasn't always for horticulture. We had to fight hard. We had to fight hard for dollars that were there, but we had to fight hard for them. So we had to really learn a lot about what our business truly was. I was asked to share with you this evening a little bit about the lessons learned from the mouse, and so I'm ready to do that. I must admit, when Mary called and Sandra and Mary talked to me a little bit about what to share this evening, Mary referenced some things she remembered from a talk I gave way too long ago, and I thought, this is amazing. I have to remember this stuff. So I'm going to share. I hope I make you proud, Mary. I'll try to remember a few of those stories. I'll focus this evening on 8 points. Okay, 8 points. I'm hoping that these 8 points can bring all the issues that we face into focus so that we truly can concentrate on the things that are important and critical to our success. First point, beauty is our goal. First point, in a beautification effort, beauty is our goal. Not planting flowers, not planting trees. Those are a part of it. But the end product, beauty, is our goal. We need to use all the elements of the natural environment. Trees, shrubs, perennials, grasses, flowers, turf, all of those things. The sky, the water. We need to use all of nature to create quality landscapes. In order to be able to deliver on beauty, we need to recognize, and Mary referenced it, certainly it's a very important focus now for Sullivan Renaissance, we need to believe in good design. There are professionals in these fields that can help us, landscape architects, landscape good designers, garden designers, artists, floral designers, all of them have sense of design. Architects all have sense of design. I don't include engineers. I'm sorry if any of you are engineers, but I don't generally include engineers in that list. But designers can really be helpful, but they're not the only ones. Many of us have an intrinsic sense of design, and we need to trust it. I remember once one of my vice presidents, wonderful guy, had been at Epcot at Disney, and he went off to Disneyland, and he had to head up Disneyland. And he called me and he said, Katy, I don't know much about trees, but you know the trees here in Disneyland look weird. He said, why? And I said, I don't know, Norm. I don't know why they look weird, but I have a feeling I know. I said, because for many years I have been told that there is a Disney style of tree pruning. And I never understood it because trees are trees, and the point of pruning is to make them look natural. But they had this intentional look that was totally unnatural. And I said, I understand that there was this Disney style of pruning that we were supposed to be embracing, which I could never embrace. And he said, well, Katy, what should I do? And I said, well, Norm, you're the vice president. Do you like it? And he said, no. And I said, well, then change it. He had an intrinsic sense that what he wanted was beautiful trees. He didn't have beautiful trees. He had weird trees. And so he changed it. It's not easy sometimes to change things like that because you got a lot of people who have a big commitment to doing what they're doing. But It took a leader to be able to say intrinsically, now granted, he called me, he asked for a little advice, and that's important, I think, every once in a while, but he did trust his own instincts. So design is a very critical part of beauty. In this day and age, part of good design is being sensitive to the environment. We're looking at much more natural styles of design. That doesn't mean that's the only thing we could do. We can do other things. We can represent Italian Renaissance gardens if we want to, perfectly acceptable thing to do, or an American colonial romanticized idea. We can do that if we want to. But in most of our communities, embracing a natural style of design is the right way to go. Minimizing turf, using tough plants that last through harsh winters and through hot summers. Using lots of shade trees, planting them properly so that they can grow well over years and years and years, and then saving them and protecting them over the years. And letting water offer unique opportunities for serene spots of beauty. Beauty. I can't stress enough, my passion is not for building gardens. My passion is for maintaining them. And I can't stress enough the importance of maintenance. You build a building, and 10 years later, if you don't fix the roof and you don't paint it, it looks like a building. It doesn't look too different from what you put up. You plant a garden. Don't maintain it for 1 year, and you no longer have a garden. You really have to focus on maintenance. And I think that for beauty, it's not just about investing in maintenance, it's investing in people who know what maintenance is about. Because if you plant a shrub that's supposed to be natural, and you hire an idiot who thinks that everything has to be done with a head shear, what happens? Beauty is gone. The beauty you intended is gone. Perhaps it's a different kind of beauty that someone embraces. Good maintenance. I would offer minimizing shearing, using mulch too much as a decorative element. Mulch is supposed to be a functional element, not a decorative. You don't want to have a line this wide of red mulch. I mean, who came up with this idea of red mulch? I don't know. But really, I went to Home Depot and I couldn't believe it. That's all they're selling. Like everybody wants red mulch. I know the reason. Because they really are kind of smart, right? I think that red mulch is the opposite side of the color wheel to green plants. So it's supposed to enhance the color of the plants. Don't use it. It's bad. Anyway, but mulch as a decorative element shouldn't be used. Don't expand the edge of a bed just to put mulch there. Mulch should be for weed suppression, moisture retention, and delivering organic material to the soil. It's great for that. But for other things, not so good. The other thing that I think is really important in terms of maintenance, the most critical thing for beauty, is making sure that plants are healthy. Bottom line, that's the most important thing. Making sure they have the right water, that they don't dry out, that they're not overwatered, making sure they have the right fertility, not over-fertilized, not put into spurts of growth. Keeping plants growing slowly, healthy, that's what's really important in maintenance. And figuring that out is no easy task, I can assure you. Beauty is our goal, then we need to think of a broad palette of experiences that we can deliver outdoors. What does that mean? What are some of those options in our communities? Parks, we think of parks, right? Parks for sports, parks for passive leisure. Walking trails that connect important destinations within our communities. Beautiful places, outdoors for events, for concerts, for festivals. We can do that in our communities. Protecting natural areas and conservation areas. Natural areas where people are allowed, maybe some conservations where people aren't allowed, that they're really just for the animals. Perhaps. We designated our Disney Wilderness Preserve in that way. It wasn't intended to have a visitor center with walkways throughout it. It was intended as a place for all those animals other than human beings. And I'm not sure we recognize that enough as part of the beauty that we offer. Public gardens, island planters, roundabouts. I saw some very good ones today. Front yards, front stoops, shop fronts, alleys, schoolyards. These are all opportunities for beauty. There is not one spot in a community that isn't an opportunity for beauty. Every spot is an opportunity, whether it be adopted by a homeowner, a shopkeeper, a group of homeowners, a group of people in the community. Every part of the community is an opportunity. Structural elements, too, can offer opportunities for beauty. Green roofs, green walls, murals. I've been to some really interesting cities with murals. Plant City, Florida. Pembroke, Canada, in Ontario. Unbelievable use of murals telling the stories of the cities, telling the history, telling the agricultural history, the economic history of this. Beautifully done. So that's real opportunities also. Beauty is not just about the daytime, it's about the nighttime. Protecting our night sky so that we can see the beauty of the night. Making sure we shield lights. I don't know, when people sell cars, why do they think they need to have so many lights at night? You guys don't have that, right? You don't have car salespeople that have all those big lights. But boy, they're in some parts of the country. Oh, my goodness, the amount of light that they shed. And none of them are shielded. So you lose the whole night sky. But we can even do one better. Just opening up the night sky, that's one thing. We can also add magic at night with various kinds of lighting. And there's all kinds of creative landscape lighting now. Moon lighting, up lighting, twinkle lighting, all kinds of interesting kinds of lighting. In terms of beauty, I would offer words are important. I think back on my years at Disney. When I got there in 1976, we were custodians of the landscape. We weren't deliverers of beauty. Our landscape was a backdrop, not an attraction. We were considered grounds, not gardens. Our department was grounds maintenance, not horticulture. So I started really thinking about words. And I was thinking about how are they entitled to go into our communities and take down trees this big around and replace them with trees this big around? And then I thought, as I'm describing it, I'm using the word tree for both things. Those things are completely different, a tree this big and a tree this big. But our zoning laws, our regulations don't differentiate very often. And so we lose 300-year-old trees because there are people who don't differentiate, and our laws don't generally differentiate. It's about words and vocabulary. And if we want beauty, we need to use words that conjure beauty. If beauty is our goal, then the overall impact is what we need to look at. Do people visiting our communities, people visiting our villages, do they use the word garden? Do they use the word beauty? Ask yourself what you use as a word when you visit your own communities. Number 2, flowers are key. Now, how can I say that? Flowers are key. How many of you believe in trees? Right? How dare I say flowers are key? Because trees are pretty darn important. I say it because there was an interesting piece of research done. It was called Preventing Plant Blindness by a couple of folks, Wandersee and Schussler, and the premise of their research was that in America and in England, we have a terrible malady. Our eyes do not see the green of landscapes anymore. We don't see it. I don't know if you've ever tested it, but I've tested myself on this theory. I was living in Alexandria, Virginia, and I had just read this article, and I thought, not going to affect me. I'm a horticulturist. I know plants when I see them, and I love plants. I see them wherever I go. I just read an article in the paper how, Every town has the ugliest street. I don't know what it is, but it seems in America every town has to have a really ugly street. Well, the ugliest street in the Alexandria area is Route 1. And it has all the big boxes on it, and basically the zoning people seem to have just given up. They don't think that it's important to beautify. But they made a commitment, and I read in the paper they were adding trees to this Route 1. And I said, okay, I'm going to go out and I am going to check this out, see if I see these plants. So I go over to Route 1, and I'm driving down Route 1, and I'm seeing, I'm seeing the Walmart, and I'm seeing the Costco, and the Home Depot, and the Bennigans, and I'm seeing all those things as I go down. I didn't see one tree. And I thought, where are the trees? Maybe it's further down. Well, I turned around, and I said, maybe I just didn't see them. I come back, and sure enough, in the center median, they had planted 8-inch caliper trees. And I didn't see them. And I see trees. I would offer to you, and this is one of the things, they were really concerned about this plant blindness. I would offer to you, and this is one thing I learned at Disney. When I first came to Disney, people would be asked, what did you like about Disney? And they'd say, how many of you have been to Disney? You know what I'm talking about here? People are friendly, and the place is clean. Right? Those are the two things everybody always used to tell us. I was determined that they were going to say, and their beautiful gardens. I was determined we were going to do that, but I didn't know how to do it. I'm thinking, why don't they see these beautiful trees? We have these gorgeous lakes in the Magic Kingdom with beautiful lawns, and we're manicuring these lawns. And it's a beautiful design. We had really talented people designing it. What's the problem here? And so we started analyzing it. And we started putting flowers in key locations. Really good flowers. You have to understand, when I got to Disney in 1976, nobody thought you'd grow flowers in Florida. And in fact, what they were doing is they were buying, how many of you plant flowers? Plant flowers? A few years back, everything was in a little 2¼ inch pot. What'd they call that, Deb? Pack, market pack or something like that, right? And in Florida, if you plant it in a plant that size, the fungus gets it before it ever blooms. Okay, and when it blooms, the foliage is all full of fungus and all full of disease. So it's a little flower sitting on top of an ugly stem. But you leave it in there because it's finally blooming. So it never looked very good. So we started changing and putting in 3-inch and 4-inch plants that were tough enough to withstand the climate down there and all the issues that it had to deal with. And what we found out by concentrating the flowers in certain areas, all of a sudden people were taking note of the flowers. By putting hanging baskets on the main street in the Magic Kingdom, the flowers were above the people, so they announced that flowers were important in this landscape. And the colors people come to Disney World in, right? Ridiculous costumes. They wear pink and red and weird clothes. So the flowers have to be pretty powerful to overcome that. They're not like up here. You go in New York, everybody's wearing black. Not at Disney World. So flowers have to be really strong to stand out. What we found is once we had flowers strategically placed, and they were terrific, all of a sudden people noticed all the other things around. And I'll never forget when Michael Eisner came in as our president, as our chief officer, and he came to announce to all of us that he was so happy to be there. I'll never forget his opening talk was sharing what he thought were some of the very special features of Walt Disney World. And guess what he said? This place has beautiful gardens. I did it! He used the garden word. And from that point on, I knew we were in pretty good shape. But we had some more surprises to come. Flowers are key, but they're not cheap. So you have to put them in the most important places where they pack the punch and keep the message going. Keep the message going. In a community, just as we did in our parks, you had to keep a similar flower color going through so that people realize it's all one place. We forget that sometimes. We like to jumble it up and put all different kinds of things in. It's like impulse buying. But you can't impulse plant with flowers. You have to have a message, and you have to deliver that message with impact. Flowers, you got to make sure they look good all the time. Oh my goodness. There was nothing that would drive me crazy more than seeing a flower bed with a weed in the middle of it. Flowers draw attention. They draw attention to what you put there. And if you let a weed grow there, they're drawing attention to the weed. It's like, I don't have a big old brooch on, but if I had a big old brooch on tonight, it would be like me drawing attention, and then, I don't know, something's like, I put some dinner on my shirt or something, you'd see the dinner on my shirt. Flowers draw attention to the garden. They have to be phenomenal. So it's important in communities, and we did this also, of course it was very important at Disney, to use tough varieties that are really well suited to your environment, that last a long time, that generally don't have to be pinched, that just really do a job for you. There are not that many out there, but there are really good plants out there now that you can use. You have to select them wisely. We actually started our own bedding plant trials to find them because we had no bedding plant trials in Florida. So we started our own, and to this day, there are still bedding plant trials going on in Florida at Walt Disney World that are being used by the whole state. It's a very cool kind of a thing. So make sure they look good all the time. Plant with simple concepts, solid colors, maybe natural mixes, like a mix of zinnias or a mix of something that's a natural mix. It takes a lot of talent to mix different kinds of plants. And unless you're really good at it, don't do that, because it really doesn't have the impact of the others. Just so happens at the Epcot Garden Festival right now, I was blown away with how many interspecific mixes there were, and they were beautifully done. But I've not seen that in years, so it was very exciting. Celebrate the seasons with flowers. How many of you put daffodils or bulbs in your communities? You do a major job of planting, because bulbs are really a great way to celebrate early spring. And of course, flowering trees do the same thing, celebrating early spring. But you could also name a flower of your city. In Rockford, Illinois, they named the coneflower as the flower of their city, and they put it out their entrance signs, and they put it on the banners. And all of a sudden, homeowners were buying coneflowers, commercial enterprises were putting coneflowers, and all of a sudden, the color of the coneflower held the whole community together. Hanging baskets do a unique job of announcing flowers in urban environments. As I mentioned to you, in our parks, it was important because they were above the people. In urban environments and in community environments, they're above the cars. Really important. They don't take a lot of flowers to make a huge impact. When they're on the ground, when flowers are on the ground, you need a lot of them in order to make an impact. But when they're up in the air, you don't need a lot of flowers to make a really strong impact. The trick is the maintenance on them. How many of you have hanging baskets that you deal with in your communities? Okay, a few of you. Bravo to you. It's not that easy to get started. One thing we learned, and I'll tell you a little bit later, one of the other important points is about figuring out costs. We figured out if we get automatic irrigation to our hanging baskets, we'd cut the cost in half. So don't underestimate your life cycle costs on things, because sometimes an investment up front is really important to the long-term benefit that you can get. One of the things that's very interesting now is there are many plants in the marketplace that are really good for hanging baskets. When we started our program back in the late 70s at Disney, we had to put begonias in the sides of baskets in order to get a round basket. But there are so many good plants now. Between the sweet potato and the bacopa and the new petunias, the wave petunia and the fungus-resistant vinca, there's so many plants now. Ivy geraniums. We used to have ivy geraniums that were okay, but the foliage was so bad we had to put ivy in the basket to put green around the basket. Now the ivy geraniums are unbelievable. I was in Cooperstown, New York. Did any of you go to Baseball City over there? Cooperstown in the summertime has the most amazing baskets. They've used the same variety. I talked to the guys, same variety year after year. They know exactly what works in their city. They know exactly the maintenance protocol, and they're fabulous every year. So, it's really quite remarkable. Once you focus on it, you can really do it well. Containers deliver flowers in a very efficient way. Window boxes, floral walls. One of the ones I love, and we did this, we've done it at Disney now for 10 years. My bedding plant specialist lady and I, she was the only other woman in horticulture when I got there. There were 150 people, but we were the only two ladies. I said to her, because she was one of the only ones that really knew anything about plants, I said to her, Heather, is there a way that we could do something out on the water? And we saw a catalog from Japan. They were showing a white styrofoam box with vegetables growing in it. And it was unique because it had a wick. Okay? So you float it out in the water, and the wick would automatically water this planter that would grow you your vegetables in the lake. And I said, Heather, is there a way that we could do something cool with this that's much more aesthetic than a white styrofoam box? So we came up with this idea of a round, black styrofoam floater, and we would put impatiens in it, and because we had the wick, it would never get dried out. Impatiens, that's one of the problems with impatiens, they dry out. They would never dry out. They'd always get exactly the water they need, and you'd float them out with a little tiny anchor, and you could dress up a lake very quickly. And they would dome. You know how impatiens dome? They would dome, and when the water was really still, there would be a reflection that would make it a whole ball in the water. So can you imagine a ball of shocking pink floating in the water? Well, right now at the festival, I just went a couple weeks ago, I couldn't believe it. They had probably, I'd have to say 80 floating planters, and they're all about this big around. Floating planters in the lake. Spectacular. A way of adding flowers in a unique way. For a short period, doesn't have to be for a long period of time, but it really works. The garden is the show. As important, perhaps even more important than any other attraction. Again, I shared this early. I'm going to share with you a little bit about some of the stats I have, but one of the things that we forget sometimes, we think that museums and cultural attractions and those things are the things that cause people to come to our communities. I would offer that the job you do with your flowers is what is going to deliver you results in terms of tourism and in terms of people coming back. So flowers are key. Beauty, flowers. Third, guest service is everyone's responsibility. Guest service. Why do we worry about guest service in communities? When people come to your community, I don't care if it's people who live there or people who are visiting, if they do not feel comfortable, they ain't coming back. And that was definitely true at Walt Disney World. We knew that. That was one of our major strategies. Guest service was something we held on to strong. It was our signature. But how does that translate when we look at landscaping issues? One of the things that we did, there was never any power equipment on while guests were in our parks. I don't know if you ever noticed that when you were in the parks. You never heard mowers, blowers, hedge trimmers, power saws, nothing. One of the things that was interesting, I was talking to somebody about, they were talking about suburbia, and they said, suburbia is the noisiest place in America. And I thought, isn't it interesting? The very equipment that is maintaining, it's supposed to be creating beauty, is destroying the aesthetic of the environment through its noise. Nobody uses brooms anymore. How many of you use brooms? Then there are people who use brooms. I'm so excited. Brooms. Hand saws. I had an arborist show me that with a Fano handsaw, you can cut, as quickly as you can power up your chainsaw, you can cut a branch this big around, just with a little Fano. You know what a Fano is? Yeah, you know this. Little handsaw. Using non-power equipment is something that we can encourage because it absolutely changes the way we deliver service within our communities. Little wows add up. Who was the wow guy? Somebody told me they judged wow. Did you judge wow? Yeah, you judged wow. There you go. wow adds up. Little special experiences. We started a IPM program, ladybug releases. One of our pest management guys said, kids really like ladybugs. Why don't we show them what we're doing? Let's do a ladybug release. And so we got little matchbooks, and we put ladybugs in them. And he put on a hard hat that had a ladybug thing on it, and he became Dr. L. Bug. And every once in a while, he'd be going around putting out his ladybugs, and the kids would ask him what he's doing. Made a huge difference for those kids. We're pruning the roses, the rose beds. Guest comes by, and we hand them a rose. Unbelievable what it can do. Just a little thing makes a huge wow. So now we're doing the good bug thing, right? And we're out there with lenses looking for the bad bugs. And a guest comes up and says, "What are you doing?" And they say, "Well, we're looking for the bad bugs, so if we see the bad bugs, then we'll put good bugs on it to eat it." And really? Yeah, you want to help? And we had little business cards that were magnifying glasses, and we'd hand them one. Say, "Help us. Tell us where you see the bad bugs." There are ways to create little wows. It could be shop owners. It could be residents. Little ways to create wows in our communities. We need sometimes to help the knowledge base, help the people, the volunteers, and the people who are actually maintaining our spaces. How can we help them? Well, I realized when I got to Disney, and I was kind of discouraged. People didn't know the names of plants. They didn't really know much about their plants. It was really, really discouraging. And I thought, you can't just beat up on them. You can't get rid of them. What are you going to do? And so we decided that we would put plant labels out for our guests who used those plant labels. Our gardeners used them as much as our guests did because they didn't want to be embarrassed when the guest asked the question. Deliver special surprises by telling stories, knowing stories about plants, knowing stories about the community, knowing stories about certain trees. We learned that with Disney's Animal Kingdom. The designers were so excited about what they designed at Disney's. Have any of you seen Disney's Animal Kingdom? It's amazing landscape, just amazing landscape. And in fact, the landscape was so important in the design of that, the conceptual design of it, that they wouldn't allow any building to be any taller than the trees, which is very unusual for Disney because they want every building to be taller than the trees. So anyway, so here you had this place, and it's an unbelievable collection of plants, over 100,000 specimen trees planted in that one park. Boy, were we proud, right? We wanted everybody to know all the stories about those trees. And the designer said, not one plant label. We said, well, how are they going to know about these great trees? We didn't know what to do. So we brought in an interesting consultant. How many of you knew Roger Swain from Victory Garden? He's a farmer with the red suspenders. He was on Victory Garden for many years. He looked like a darn crazy farmer, right? Well, he happens to be a PhD entomologist from Harvard and a very fine writer. And we knew he had written these great books and he'd got a lot of awards for them. We brought him down as a consultant and said, how do we do this, Roger? We want to tell these stories. And he says, tell the stories. Arm your gardeners with about 10 different stories. Plants that are really interesting. And when the guests come by, if they're working in the area, tell them the story. That's what we did, and it was transformational. Knowledgeable, friendly, attentive gardeners, arborists, they are a huge surprise. It's the last thing a guest expected. Usually, those are the folks that say, I just work here, right? They're usually the folks that don't speak any English. I don't want to answer your question. I'm working. If it was a transformation to get them to a place where they were part of the interaction, but they truly were the surprise that made a difference in the community, in our community. Number 4, so we have beauty is important, key is flowers, guest service. Number 4, know your costs. This one was huge. Know your costs. We did a lot of research. All we could find were costs on what it costs to install a garden, not what it costs to maintain it. And as I mentioned earlier, installation is one small part of beauty in the garden, beauty in the landscape. We did a zero-based budget. We zero-based everything. We knew exactly how much it cost us to prune trees, how much it cost us to plant flowers and to maintain them, how much it cost us to put in a hanging basket and to maintain it, how much it cost us to mow certain kinds of turf, fine turf, rough turf, roadway turf. We knew exactly how much it cost us. And we tested it over time. So by the time we got to about 5 years, we had a pretty good system down as to what it cost us. We knew it cost us 0.24 man-hours per square foot per year to maintain a flower bed. Now that's a pretty specific stat, and it held up year after year after year. Well, what happens when you're told to cut your budget by 15%? What we did is we looked at our zero base and we said, we can cut in this area because we know exactly how much it costs us to mow those areas. If we change the frequency by 1 or by 2, we can reduce by that amount. We knew exactly how to manage our costs. Knowing life cycle costs is also important. I would dare say, as you all are involved with planting gardens, it's really important to allocate the money to maintain them as you allocate the money to plant them. Because if you don't have the system set up for maintenance, it's not going to happen. Then you're just going to have to replant it again in 2 years. So figure out what the life cycle cost is, because there might be some things like irrigation that might be, in the long term, worth installing up front when you know you can get more money. We challenged ourselves. Sometimes others challenged us, of course. Again, my first year at Disney, we had to cut the budget by 15%. First year. We think we have tough times now. Well, we had some pretty tough times back in 76, 78, 77, 78. Pretty tough times. I thought that was traditional, that you always cut a budget by 15%. I thought, God, we'll be down to zero pretty soon. It's going to be hard. But you can learn how to, first of all, look at new technologies. Always be alert to new technologies and better varieties. We can change frequencies. We were planting some flower beds 5 times a year. If we could reduce it to 3 times a year, that would change a huge amount of the cost. And changing practices. Where we were shearing something, let it go natural. Where we were over-fertilizing, don't over-fertilize anymore. Where we were, just doing certain things that didn't require the same level of management. Even in pest management, we had a preventative pest management program where we would spray every month or every week, depending on what the problem we thought the problem was. Stop that. Everything was done as an as-needed basis. And we went to a huge IPM program, which is an environmental program. We used savings to deliver cost savings when we were required of it. If we weren't required, we used those savings to deliver back to enhancements to the landscapes. We were also always looking for revenue opportunities. Oh, it killed me that we were always considered a cost. When we were an attraction, we were making business here. Drove me nuts. So we decided, okay, we'll try something new. We'll see if we can't deliver revenue. So we always had questions about, we give a tour. And I knew it. I'm a public garden person. I knew my public garden friends were all charging like $1 for a tour. And I said, it's worth more than $1 if you do it right. So we figured out how to cost it out. And we costed it out. It was going to cost us about $20 to do a really good quality tour of the landscape at that time when we started it. And everybody said, nobody's going to go on those tours. Nobody's going to go on those tours. Filled the tours every time, and the comments were always excellent. People will pay for good quality, right? You'll pay for good quality, right? People will. It just, you have to deliver the value. We also tried a symposium, and you could do this. You could bring your towns together with the kind of coordination you have here. You could offer really good information for other counties in New York, for other communities. You have really good information as to how to implement beautification efforts. So symposia. We started Pollyanna me, I'm believing that gardens are important in this world, so maybe we should offer a symposium on how important gardens are. And I couldn't believe it. First year we had 750 people at our symposium on how important gardens are. And people to this day come up to me and say, I was at your Magic of Landscape symposium. Don't you remember me? I said, well, not really. But anyway. And then we had kind of a huge breakthrough. We had a huge breakthrough when the president asked us if we would put on a garden festival. And all we could do is say, we'll try. And now that garden festival at Epcot is worth millions of dollars to the company. That's how much revenue it delivers to the company. Just a garden festival. And I would offer many of you do plant sales. You probably do special festivals or events. But there are many ways of delivering revenue from your horticultural asset. Gated attractions like public gardens, zoos, conservatories, butterfly houses, family gardens. I went to the Canopy Walk at Morris Arboretum in Philadelphia. Unbelievable, family-oriented destination that's allowed them to raise their membership rate, raise their gate price, and they're still getting unbelievable attendance in that garden. You get it. You know this. You know that you can raise money using plants as the opportunity. Number 5, keep the labor force motivated. Whether it's volunteers or whether it's paid, keep the labor force motivated. What motivates the labor force? I walked into a union shop at Disney. They weren't very motivated, I have to admit. What makes a workforce motivated? They have to love what they're doing. They have to know something about what they're doing. They have to like themselves, and they have to like the people around them. How do you get that to happen? Well, one of the interesting things when I first got there, I just came out of school. I was with a lot of wonderful people, and I get to this place where nobody knows anything about horticulture, and it was a little bit scary. And I thought to myself, as I looked around at this huge staff of people, I didn't see any women. So one woman was there potting up plants, and she wasn't allowed to drive her Cushman. I said, what's going on here? And I went to the people who do the hiring, and I said, why are there no women? I went to school, and there were a whole bunch of women who are trained in horticulture, and they said, well, they come here and they don't have any experience, and we need experience. And I said, well, how are they going to get experience if you don't hire them? And so we went back and forth, and finally we were able to get the people who hired our gardeners to offer either a degree or experience as the qualification. We started getting in many more college graduates. They were sending them away as overqualified. Once we started getting this kind of mix between experienced people and college people, we had a whole new problem. Because the experienced people think the college people are idiots, and the college people think that the experienced people are idiots, and how do you get them to work together, right? So we had this brainy idea. Well, we'll have a training program, and we will justify the training program based on productivity. Now, how many of you think that would be a good idea? Offering a training program that would increase productivity. And how many of you are entrepreneurs? Come on. Training. Is training important? You think it is? Well, everybody thought I was an idiot, but we were able to implement it. I had one believer in the administration, and we put this program into place. And in fact, we were able to get everything done we needed to get done and have a training program on company time at the same time. Now, I had some learnings to do, I have to admit. My first training program was in an auditorium like this, not quite as beautiful as this, but it was kind of like this. And I had 150 gardeners sitting in the room. And they had just worked since 5 o'clock in the morning, and we brought them in after lunch. And I brought in the top bedding plant expert from the University of Florida. I thought this would be a real treat for them. And Dr. Benny Chia got up just like I am here, and he had slides up there, and they turned the lights down. You know why I didn't turn the lights down? He turned the lights down, and I was in the back of the room, mama hen, you know, and I watched all those ball caps, all the ball caps started going, all of them started falling down. And I got angry. Oh, man, I was mad. I'm paying you this time. You better stay awake. And then I remembered back to my college days when we had to go and meet with the head of Longwood Gardens after we had just worked out in the garden. And there were only 5 of us, and we had to pay each other. We had to agree who was going to stay awake so that the others wouldn't feel bad about falling asleep. And it dawned on me, I got to change this training program. We got to have it all outside. And we did the training program, and it was unbelievably successful at bringing these people together, giving them the same level of knowledge. The experienced people showed the college kids how to oil machines, how to mix fuel, how to do the things that needed to be done to equipment. The college kids told the other folks why you don't bang into the trunk of the tree. but there's a cambium layer there, and you don't bang into the trunk of the tree. So there were really good exchanges that happened, and it really did work. But keeping the labor force motivated, training programs, very important, promote from within. In terms of volunteers, one of the things I discovered, which was really interesting, I felt it was very important for us to help out in the community, so we always did a lot of community service. But managers would always be the workers, and the workers would be the leaders when we went out on community projects. So there were role shifts that allowed us to see the talent that was in the group. And when you're working with volunteers, it's very important to really kind of get a sense of who the true leaders are, and it really is helpful. Keeping the labor force motivated, getting the industry involved in terms of opportunities and partnerships. And again, I can't stress enough the importance of volunteers for keeping spirit in a team. Volunteers and interns. In a workforce, interns do that. In a community, volunteers do that. They're the ones that keep everybody buoyed up. Number 6, focus on the environment as opportunities for savings. This was really a surprise to me. When I was asked to head up environmental initiatives, first I thought, why me? And then I realized I was probably one of the only ones that was saying we shouldn't be using pesticides. We should be recycling, because in our operation it was important. I was one of the only ones that said, why are we using cypress mulch when cypress is now being cut down just for mulch? Why, I was asking a lot of questions and changing a lot of our practices based on that. Well, there wasn't a lot going on in the company other than what we were doing in horticulture. So I ended up inheriting the whole thing. And what we were able to find out was, by focusing on, I knew that we weren't just going to be able to do Pollyanna, isn't it nice to do feel-good environmental things. It was a company. It was a profit company. If we didn't save money, it wasn't going to happen. So we had to find the ways to save the money, and then maybe we could do some other things. You know what some of the biggest ones were? You see it now all the time in hotels. Offering guests the opportunity not to change the sheets. You see it now all the time. But we started that, and there was huge pushback because no 5-star hotel is allowed to, so we weren't 5-star hotels anyway, but that was okay. They were always trying to get there. And what we realized was guests wanted that. They wanted us to be efficient. So we looked at all kinds of things. We looked at weather-driven computer irrigation control to make sure we only used the water we needed. We looked at using fiber pots for our bedding plants. We contracted about 3 million bedding plants a year. We were using all plastic pots. We were getting real good at recycling. Oh, man, were we good. I had hired 3 people to recycle. And then I realized, why am I hiring 3 people to recycle? If I could use something that doesn't need to be recycled. And we started investigating. We did it. We were able, what we learned there was, we were able to not only save, we couldn't save money on the purchase price, but it cost us far less to plant it because you didn't have to save all those pots. So we were able to get this one. We went from 0.30 man-hours per square foot per year to 0.24. Remember I told you 0.24 man-hours per square foot per year? That's based on a fiber pot. But we were spending 0.30. You multiply that times, you mathematicians, multiply that times 3 million, and you can see how much money we were able to save just by making that environmental change. We would not have been motivated to do it any other way. Biologicals and biorationals for pest management. Didn't save us a lot of money, but it did save us some. And it made a huge difference in the people that came to Disney World. They didn't want to come to rooms that had been sprayed with chemicals. Interestingly enough, who would think? They did it in their own homes, but when they come to a hotel, they didn't want it. Compost from municipal sludge, food and landscape waste. We actually did this whole composting thing. I got so excited about it, man. I had the American Association of Public Gardens and Arboreta come for a big meeting, 600 people, 700 people, and I was kind of upset about the year before when they had a box lunch. And they were all talking about saving the rainforest, and then here was this box lunch, and they had a pile of trash this high. And I went, oh, that's terrible. They're worried about the rainforest, and here we are wasting all this paper, and they can't recycle it, and they're not going to do anything. So we had a box lunch where we had done the research on how we could make it all compostable. So we used cellophane and wax paper and not saran wrap, and we used no metal, and we did the whole thing, right? And then we got the composting truck, because we're kind of like our own little city. And we put all the stuff inside the composting truck, and we brought it down, and we put it in its own windrow, and we windrowed it. And 3 months later, we sent everybody in that meeting back their lunch in a little bag of soil. Everybody got their lunch back. Composting, such a cool thing to do, could be a huge savings if you do it and use it for soil and for fertilizer. Lots of different opportunities for environment and for saving money. One of the big ones we did was so bizarre, but just using recycled printer cartridges. At Walt Disney World, that was a $250,000 savings. Using recycled printer cartridges instead of new ones. Surprising sometimes what some of these savings can be. Making your community a place to model great behavior, even if all you focus on is savings, model good environmental behavior. And what's really interesting right now, especially with local and fresh food and lots of local initiatives, local energy initiatives, it is a great place. And if you do something countywide like you have, a great way to offer and nurture green jobs. Young people are so into the environment, they don't know where the opportunities are for green jobs. And we, as communities, can be offering those green jobs. Number 7, survey your visitors. This was a huge one. I didn't know how important this was, but this was really important. Why do people come to your communities? Why do tourists come to your communities? Do they come? Well, we found out by analyzing our guests that 75% of our visitors were repeat visitors, people who came again and again. But all of our marketing was targeted to the new visitor. So some of our brilliant gurus decided to do a survey to find out why people came back. Did they come back for new attractions? Did they come back to see the character? Did they come back for new entertainment shows? Why did they come back? We were putting a lot of money into new attractions, thinking that's the reason they came back. And it was interesting. I mean, this is, of course, with, some high-end survey company like Gallup or somebody. And interestingly enough, the answer came back that the reason they came back was for atmosphere. That was the word that was used, atmosphere. Now, that could be the wonderful climate of Florida, which it is. That could be the smells of chocolate chip cookies as you're walking down Main Street. That could be the architecture, could be anything. So they decided to try to find out what in atmosphere was the key driver. And you know what the answer was? Gardens! Can you believe it? It was the landscape. It was gardens. It was beauty, natural beauty. How is that relevant to your communities? It's really relevant. If people go back to Disney World with castles and Mickey Mouses and attractions and all that stuff, and what they're coming back for is beauty, you don't have to have Mickey Mouse and castles and attractions and all that stuff. You just have to have beauty. It's really important. Well, we were sitting pretty for a while, maybe a year, but then it went away. But it was really important. It was a really important finding. The other thing we found, which is really important for surveys. How many of you do any survey work? Do you do any survey work? Some of you do survey work. One of the things that we found out, which was really interesting to me, you know how when you do a survey, you check fair, poor, fair, good, very good, excellent, right? Or there's a scale or something. And then you go, okay, if we have good, very good, and excellent, that adds up to 90%, we did great. We don't know what it means. Well, we had this fabulous industrial engineer who helped us understand this. He figured out that if somebody rated their experience at Disney good, that their intent to return was under 40%. Now remember, 75% of the business is return visitation. 40%, if less than 40%, if they rated good. If they rated very good, it was in the 40%. If they rated it excellent, it was over 65%. We never looked at anything except excellent ratings again. To this day, they do surveys at Disney, and they only look at excellent ratings. They call them the excellent ratings. I don't think the staff knows why they just have excellent ratings. That they don't know the backstory on it. But you do. That's the backstory. That if you want to have somebody come back to an educational program, come back to a tour, come back, you have to have an excellent rating. That's how much better than good it has to be. Fair isn't the only bad one. All those others have to be considered. And the thing that was interesting about this study was really analyzing what created excellent. What was it that drove an excellent rating? And the thing that was interesting there, it was a real surprise, was it was a single, magical, memorable moment. A single, magical, memorable moment. When that guest could have been there a week, one single interaction that blew them away. Maybe the kid dropped the ice cream cone and somebody went and got him a new ice cream cone. I don't know what it was, but it could be anything. It could have been a smile when they desperately needed a smile. Who knows what that magical moment was, but consistently, that's what it was. Is this something we can do in our communities? I think so. That's not putting a castle in the sky. A single, magical, memorable moment. My eighth one, and I think this is really a significant one also, is, and this comes to value, is measure the economic, social, and environmental benefits to your community and help each other with great ideas. There is a good foundation now of information about the social, environmental, and economic benefits of quality landscapes. There's a site called Magic of Landscaping, www.magicoflandscaping.com, has excellent information. If you push the button under benefits, excellent information. There's another group called the Landscape Architecture Foundation that now sees it as its mission to find this material and deliver this material. Now we have really good information that school gardens, in fact, allow kids to learn math and science much better than what they can learn inside. We have data to show this. We have data to show that people get healthier quicker, recover from injury, if they can see plants and connect with plants. That we can have, and you had a speaker who spoke about the decreased level of crime and the increased level of safety by having plants in the environment. Increased level of health. One of Michelle Obama's great initiatives right now is about Let's Move, is about health and using the outdoor environment to increase the health in our communities. Increased value in commercial square footage, increased value in residential square footage. These are both documented. More sales, hanging baskets and flowers in local garden centers if there is a program that demonstrates what works in the community. More frequent visits to commercial areas by residents in commercial areas that are beautiful with with the plants and with natural materials. I think it's important to brag about these benefits. How many of you use any social media? Do you use Twitter? How many got Twitter? How many of you use Facebook? Use Facebook? I try, but I don't. Deborah knows it well. How many of you use YouTube? You use YouTube? Get your communities into these places. Twitter people about the value, about something great that you saw, because that can actually help extend the value. And I would offer, being a great proponent of American Bloom, that is our American program. It's a contest that really recognizes the overall impact of what is beautiful outside in our communities. I would encourage you to get involved in contests like that and really partner with others who are doing great things. American Bloom now has a book called Best Ideas, and you might really enjoy seeing what communities around America are doing with their communities, some of the best ideas they've come up with for flowers, for trees, for landscaped areas, for increasing the tidiness, whatever. Beauty. health, joy, wealth, magic, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. These are our American aspirations. In a democracy, we believe by working together, voting for the right things, that these things are attainable. We might not be able to count on these things from our federal government, but we sure can make them happen in our communities. No matter how much philanthropy and how many volunteers, there are real costs to effective beautification efforts. There are real costs to planting. There's real costs to maintenance. And there's always the question, are flowers, green spaces, parks, beautiful containers, community gardens, hanging baskets, landscape bicycle trails, are these nice-to-haves or are they need-to-haves? The Disney company knows that its traditional quality landscapes is a need-to-have for the success of that profit company. And in fact, as I mentioned, the Epcot Flower and Garden Festival is now driving millions of dollars in revenue. As I've traveled to cities across America, I've noticed over and again where parks, public gardens, schoolyards, community gardens, bike trails, hanging baskets, and flower displays, how these important beautification efforts have brought communities together, have increased tourism, increased commercial and residential values. Where these landscape improvements and enhancements were credited to improving the quality of life, to making citizens proud again and optimistic about their communities. I would offer that quality landscapes are need-to-haves across America. I say bravo to each of you for ensuring that Sullivan County stays the course. You are the agents of change in your communities. You are the extraordinary leaders who will rally business, government, and your neighbors to bring our American dream to your community. Beauty, health, joy, wealth, magic. It's in your hands. I hope each of you will consider joining our American Bloom effort in 2012. I'd be proud to have our great state of New York being recognized as having the best and most beautiful places to live. And I also encourage you, as I'm co-chairing it, please come to our symposium this year in October, as we're going to have many great ideas for communities, ideas from cities across America. And so with that, I offer, you're doing God's work, and I applaud each of you for the great work you're doing. And I look forward to coming back and seeing some of these great projects that you're embarking on. Congratulations and good luck.